We're gonna go, we won't waste any time. We'll go ahead and get started. Oh, right. So tonight we have our annual water supply update. And tonight I have with me our experts, Dave Briggs, our Director of Operations and Maintenance, and Mike Tognolini, our Director of Water and Natural Resources. And assisting me as our Q&A wingman is Rolando Gonzalez. I'm on Favorite Hill with the Community Affairs Office. So I'm going to pull up our presentation and share it. All right. That beautiful view you see is of Pardee Reservoir. And while we're going over that flyover, let me kind of give you the rules of the game. All right, so please note that this webinar will be recorded and that your participation is considered your acceptance of that recording. So, all right, and for questions, please type your questions into the Q&A and we will answer them after the presentation. So moving on to the next slide. And here's what we'll go over tonight. Our current EBMUD water supply, the water supply for the state and protecting water quality, the future of water, our supply reliability, our water supply portfolio, potential future supplemental supply sources, and watershed fuel management and protection. So as I mentioned, here are our experts, Dave and Mike. And I must say, this is Mike's final appearance as our panelist, as he will retire into the sunset in a month. Therefore, he will be grinning throughout this presentation. So, all right, we're going to start with Dave and our current water supply.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mona, for the introduction. And I could look at that video of that water cascading over Pardee all day long. It's quite a sight. Okay, so you're going to control it, Mona, if you want to go to the next slide. So yeah, I'm going to talk about kind of the here and now with what water supply we have, and Mike's going to be talking more about things into the future. So first, when we do give people briefings on our water supply conditions, we generally do like to talk about what kind of water we need and how much water we need and how much water we're producing. Because if you look at the water supply situation, it's really an equation with sources on one side and demand on the other. So you need to understand both and how they work together. And so did want to spend a little bit of time explaining how much water we produce and need every day. So this graphic shows many things. So we'll walk through it here slowly, but the first thing you'll notice is there's a seasonality to our water production or our water demand. Obviously, in the summertime, we produce more water, there's more water demand, people are irrigating, and it can be as much as 50% of that in the wintertime when we get the rainy season in this Mediterranean climate that we have, and people turn off their irrigation systems. So the other thing to notice is that the red line is the water we're producing this year, this fiscal year, which we have a couple more months of. And you can see that this year in red and last year in green are relatively low and about 30% below where the demand is only 20 years ago. So our customers are doing a great job with conservation. There's water usage is much more in people's consciousness about using it wisely. We have more water efficient appliances in people's homes, and probably a little bit less industry and consumptive use commercially in our service area. So all of those things kind of factor into having a little bit lower demand than we did 20 years ago. And this kind of falls under a penny saved is a penny earned. So a water drop saved is a water drop that remains in our reservoirs upcountry or elsewhere that we can use during a drought. So that's why we'd like to talk about this first. But you can also see that as we're progressing into the summer now, demand is starting to pick up, and that changes a lot of our operations and how we move water around. So now let's look at the supply side, Mona, if you can. Thank you. Okay, so we'll look at local precipitation first, and you can see our Mediterranean climate there, the chart on the left, and uh, the the white lines or the open bars are average numbers that we see in the East Bay typically. And you can see that peaking during the winter. And then the blue is what we actually experienced over the last 9 months or so as we started this water year. So we started very well November, December with a lot of rainfall, even above average at one point. During January, we had a rigid high pressure set up over the state of California that blocked a lot of the storms and pushed them northward. And then in February, we had several atmospheric rivers roll through, which gave us plentiful rainfall, very intense rainfall that really got us close back up to average. And you can see that March was below average and April has been relatively dry so far. Even though we might get a little more precip later this week, it probably won't be much. We are looking at a below normal year, but as you'll see shortly, and as Mona kind of teased it in the overall title of the presentation, did winter deliver for us? And you'll see shortly that even with this below normal years, we did get enough water to get through another year. But I'll show you the rest here shortly. Okay, so let's look upcountry. So this is 90% of our water comes from the McKelvey watershed. And so this graphic shows how much precipitation. So this is both rain and snow. The snow has been converted into a water equivalent. And you can see that we typically get much more precipitation upcountry. Typically, we'll get about 48 inches total on average upcountry in the watershed. Our watershed spans from about 600 feet or even lower if we go down to Comanche, all the way up to 8, 9, 10,000 feet in the east in the Sierra near Kirkwood Ski Resort near Tahoe. So our watershed does span quite a bit of elevation. In the upper elevations, we get most of that falling as snow in the winter. We are closer to average with our upcountry precipitation, and as I mentioned, 90% of our water comes from the McKelvey watershed. So this is the one that really does matter. So let's go to the next slide. So another metric we use to gauge our water supply is our snowpack. And as I mentioned, this is most relevant at the higher elevation. So Caples Lake has been our typical station that we use to benchmark our snowpack. This is 8,000 feet high. So it is high enough to get snow pretty regularly. And you can see on this chart, there's multiple lines. And again, red is the present year we're in, and you can see that we're tracking close to an average amount of snow depth, just under at 93% of average. So our snowpack is pretty average right now for mid-April. But just to appreciate the variability of California hydrology, and certainly this plays out in our own watershed and here locally around our service area, we see such a wide variety from year to year. In 2015, you can see that blue line at the bottom. We barely got any snow. Compare that to the black line, which was only 2 years ago. We almost, I think that water year ranked third out of about 100 years of record. Just 2 years ago, we got almost the wettest year we've ever recorded. And you can see just by comparing the blue and the black line, there's likely a factor of 10 difference in the amount of runoff we get from those two different water years. So very different variability of hydrology in California, and it does really emphasize the role of storage in getting us through those droughts if we capture it when times are wet. So what we'll see from here is as we get warmer and we get more daylight, the snowpack will melt, and we have reserved space in our reservoirs upcountry to capture all this when it does run off into the river. So let's keep going to the next. Okay, so here's where it all kind of comes together, looking at our storage. And the bulk of our storage is upcountry at Pardee and Comanche Reservoir. Comanche is a couple hundred feet in elevation, right, is the foot of the foothills. Pardee is a little bit higher up on the river. Elevation of Pardee when it's full is about 560 feet. And so you can see that overall, for this time of year, we have more storage than we typically have, a little bit more than average, but we do have some capacity in our reservoirs, and most of that is there is there is space in the reservoirs, but we have that snowpack sitting above the reservoirs and the higher elevations in the watershed that will melt and then fill in some of those gaps in our storage. And when it comes to, so this year will be fine. We've got plenty of water this year. Next year, we will likely go into the next year, and we can't predict at all what kind of hydrology we're going to get next year. The science is nowhere near advanced enough to tell us what kind of hydrology we're going to get next year. But we will go into next year full, which is a great sign. So we will be set up about as well as we can be set up going into next year. And you might ask yourself, well, 629,000 acre feet of storage going into next year, that still doesn't represent a full reservoir. So what do you mean, Dave? Well, we cannot have absolute full storage going into the winter because we do have flood control responsibilities for communities in the San Joaquin Valley. So we have to have about 150,000 acre feet of available storage upcountry while we go into the winter. So we'll be as full as we can possibly be likely going into next winter. Okay. And so that answers this. Oh, we're going to talk about the state a little bit more here. Okay, so just panning back out a little bit, what I just described is East Bay MUD's service area water supply. And I just wanted to give you a sense of what are things looking like statewide. So this chart shows the snowpack in the northern, central, and southern Sierra. East Bay MUD gets their water from the central Sierra. The McKelvey watershed is located there. But looking at things statewide are important for a variety of reasons. There are many, many people that rely on the snowpack throughout the Sierras for their water supply. So these are contractors with the State Water Project or contractors with the Central Valley Project, which is federal, or their own local water systems. So it's important to kind of pan out and look at the broader landscape. And also, another important reason is that even though we may be in a good situation here at East Bay MUD, if the rest of the state is in a drought condition, which they are not, but if they were, that could impact East Bay MUD's own levels of conservation. We had more independence on this, 15, 20 years ago, but now many statewide conservation measures are sort of imposed and pushed to all water districts, regardless of what specific situation they may be in. So not only do we keep an eye on our own situation, but we have to keep an eye on things going statewide as well, because they could impact us. But overall, things looking good. Or I should say well enough to keep us out of a drought, even though they are below normal. So I think we're going to transition now to water quality. So yeah, so this is just a couple moments on this. Mona, did you want to pause here and do a little poll here, or?
Yeah, let me find my poll. It has disappeared.
Okay, while Mona is finding the poll, we'll talk about water quality for a moment before we set things up for Mike. And the photo here is showing one of our staff sampling our water. Now, our water's not red. Our water is crystal clear when it comes out of the tap. So what this staff person has done is added a reagent to the water, probably to test a physical parameter like pH or something. But yeah, so our water is not that color. Our water is clear, as you know, when you get it out of your tap.
Okay, I'm going to launch the poll now, Dave. Okay, and that poll is asking, do you think, oops, wrong one. Let me see. Wrong one, sorry, back. Let me go to this one. This is the one we want. What is your most, yeah, I tell you. Technology. All right, we'll go back. So. I'm sorry. We'll just skip that one and go on, Dave.
Okay. Well, I think what Mona was going to do was ask the group what type of water quality issues were of concern to them. And I will say that being in this position here at East Bay MUD, of course, we hear about all sorts of water quality concerns. But at the same time, we are very, very lucky here at East Bay MUD, and just about all of them are avoided because of the quality of our raw water that we have and our ability to treat it to high standards. So we do avoid most, if not all, water quality problems.
There we go.
You want to go for it, Mona?
Yeah, what concerns you most about EBMUD's water quality? And is it illegal dumping? Is it PFAS? Or is it wildfire runoff? And I'm going to give that a few seconds and give everybody a chance to answer.
And of course, PFAS is short as an abbreviation for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, which has been in the news a lot lately. So you want to wait for this to
Yeah, I'm
come
going
back?
to give everybody a chance to answer, and I think everybody's done. So we're going to end the poll. And I would say, let's see, yep, PFAS won. 27 out of 49 people are concerned about PFAS. Illegal dumping comes in second, and then wildfire runoff.
Okay. Well, that's good because we're set up to talk about mostly PFAS here in the next couple minutes. I think Mona probably could have added many more things on there, such as algae or disinfection byproducts or lead or microplastics, but I will, and we'll spend a few minutes talking about PFAS, but I also want to say that in just about every other category, our water quality is excellent, and it does avoid a lot of difficulties we have running the water system because our quality is so good. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about PFAS for a few minutes here. And as I mentioned, this is, and could you, I still see the poll, Mona, if you want
Oh,
to move that to
sorry.
the side or something.
Let me see.
So PFAS again stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. They are ubiquitous. They're used in a whole host of products that we buy and use every day. There are many active things legislatively to try to phase out PFAS, and some have already been put into effect. So I think slowly but surely we are phasing these out of our commercial products, but PFAS are chemicals that we typically call forever chemicals because they are very stable and they do not break down very quickly and they stay in the environment for a long time, and there's minute quantities of them around everywhere. So this became, go ahead and go to the next slide. Even though the state of California is rapidly developing their own contaminant levels for these substances, the federal government in the Biden administration already did that, established these levels. And the good news is that levels that we monitor for in our treated water are lower than these contaminant levels that have been set by the federal government. So there are no remediation actions necessary for East Bay Mud, and none are planned at this time. Of course, this is going to be, we're going to be monitoring this going forward. It's a requirement, and it's something that we take seriously, and we will be responsibly doing that. We'll continue to monitor for these substances in the future, but things are looking pretty good right now. And just as a general matter, you will find PFAS more likely in groundwater sources than in surface water, especially surface water that East Bay Mud uses in either well-protected or reasonably well-protected watersheds. And that's why we just simply don't have very high levels of PFAS in our water. Let's go to the next slide before we set it up here for Mike. So I will wrap up my portion here by just recapping here that precipitation this year was below average. We will, even though we still have a couple more months where we could see some precipitation, we will likely finish this year from every metric that we want to look at. Local rain, higher elevation snow will probably be a little below average, and those numbers will probably be reflected statewide as well. However, because our demand is still relatively low, everyone's doing a great job conserving water. That below average quantity of precipitation is enough. It's enough to get us through this year and set us up relatively well for next year. So we don't anticipate any drought restrictions, both here at East Bay Mud or statewide for that matter. And last, our water quality is excellent. I drink it every day. I love it. And whenever I travel somewhere, 9 times out of 10, the water will not taste anywhere near as good as East Bay Mud's. So that's what I have, and I'll be around for questions, and I'm ready to listen to Mike.
Thank you, Dave. All right, Mike, you are up. And this Mike will talk about the future of our water supply.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mona. Dave was talking a little bit about the variability of our water supply and showed it on his snowpack graphic that one year we could be at extreme record levels of snowfall, and only a few years away from that is a year that's totally dry, an order of magnitude lower. So those are the years, those dry years are the ones that we really spend time planning for to make sure that we have adequate water supply for our customers. So Mona, if you want to go to the next slide, please. All right, so as I mentioned, McKelvey water supply is variable. We do have droughts, and we are also anticipating already see the effects of climate change on our watershed and expect that that will continue. And what we're finding is that we have longer drought periods. It's not just a single dry year, but multiple dry years in a row. And we're also experiencing, when it is a wet year, we get very wet years. So the variability has increased as a result of climate change. So our objective in looking at drought supply planning is to, first of all, diversify our water supply portfolio. We want to look at a bunch of different ways that we can attack a drought so that we're sure we have enough water. And just as a reference, we plan our water supply for droughts that will occur 30 years from now. So we're planning 30 years in advance. We're taking into account the anticipated growth and development in our service area, which is not a lot, but there is some. And we're also factoring in the conservation that our customers have done and will continue to perform in the years ahead. So as an example of the portfolio that we have in place, we focus first on reducing demand. So water conservation, we have a recycled water program. So where it's appropriate right now, we take certain customers off of the potable water system and provide them with treated wastewater that can be used for industrial or irrigation purposes. But our long-term plan will also include water purchases, which are water transfers from other willing sellers during drought periods, and we have some partnerships that we've been working on there. As Dave mentioned, storage helps. So in this case, we're looking at storing water underground in groundwater banking partnerships. And then, as I mentioned, expanding our non-potable reuse, our recycled water program, and preparing for a future scenario where EBMUD would invest in potable reuse or purified water that could be where we could treat wastewater to the point that it could be served as drinking water. And next slide, please. So here's the portfolio. And again, our strategy is to build this resilient and sustainable water supply through a diverse water supply portfolio. EBMUD has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in our drought supply protection. And the biggest element of that is our Freeport Regional Water Project, which went online in 2011 and allows us to access water from a different watershed. Right now we have access to the McKelvey watershed and then also to our local East Bay reservoirs. But through Freeport, we can now access water from the Sacramento River, which provides opportunity to get water from Sacramento Valley, American River, Yuba River, etc. So that's become a major element for us. And we've operated Freeport during the most recent droughts that we've had. 2014, 2015, 2022 were years where we pulled supplemental water from Freeport. And that CVP, which is listed above Freeport, that's our Central Valley Project, which is a federal water project. And EBMUD has a contract to get water from Freeport through our Central Valley Project contract during those dry years. In addition to CVP water, we also have water transfers that I mentioned, groundwater storage, water conservation, recycle water, and you can see the goals that we've established for conservation: 70 million gallons per day of conservation by the year 2050, and our recycle water goal of 20 million gallons per day of recycled water by the year 2050. And then in addition to conservation, during a drought, our planning goal is to achieve an 85% reliability in our supply. So we anticipate in the very worst drought that in addition to the conservation that our customers already do, we would ask for a maximum cutback of 15% of which would be basically changing behaviors, changing the way that people use water, things like brown lawns, et cetera, as opposed to conservation, which are more long-term, changing out fixtures, using efficient appliances, et cetera. Okay, next slide. All right, I mentioned the Freeport Regional Water Project, and I don't have access to the mouse that's controlling this, but I just would point out, as I mentioned, that the Freeport Regional Water Project draws water from the Sacramento River. That water is pumped eastward into the Folsom South Canal and then moves south through a series of canals and pipelines and connects with the McElemy aqueducts. And as Dave mentioned, 90% of our water supply comes from Pardee Reservoir and flows across the Central Valley and across the Delta and into the East Bay, where that water is then treated and delivered to customers. So the Freeport project is our supplement. And so during that those dry periods, as I mentioned, we can use our federal water contract and we can access water transfers to supplement the water that might be available from the McElemy River. All right, next slide. While Freeport is our most significant and most important dry year water supply source, we are also planning for future additional sources to further diversify the portfolio and also to meet any changes in our demand or deal with reductions in our future supply. And I mentioned water transfers earlier. Our biggest partner is Placer County Water Agency, and we're anticipating that we're going to be signing an agreement. We already have an interim agreement in place with them, but a long-term agreement as well that will provide up to 47,000 acre-feet per year when it's available. That's nearly a quarter of East Bay MUD's water supply during a dry year at the maximum. Non-potable reuse, so this is irrigation, industrial use, not for drinking. We think we'll be able to produce up to 14,000 acre-feet of water for non-potable use. What that does is it frees up the potable water for all the rest of us to use. So if we take a large industrial user like a refinery or someone like that and put them on recycled water, we've now freed up potable water that the rest of us can use. Potable reuse or purified water is a longer-term potential project that was identified in our recent Recycle Water Master Plan. It's a good 15 plus years away, maybe 20 or more, before we would implement such a program. But there are opportunities for significant savings in our potable water system if we went to a purified water program where we take highly purified wastewater and deliver to our customers. As I mentioned, groundwater banking, we have had a long-term discussion going on with San Joaquin County. Our aqueducts, our McElemy aqueducts, take water right through an overdrafted groundwater basin in between Lodi and Stockton in that area. And there's an opportunity to store water underground, and we're working closely with irrigation districts, the county itself, and individual growers on a concept to put water in the ground during wet periods and then be able to pull some of it out during the dry period while leaving some of the water behind to benefit the groundwater basin as well. And then lastly, Bayside Groundwater Project is a small groundwater storage project in the San Lorenzo area that could long-term produce up to 5,000 acre-feet. And that's a water supply mainly for deeper droughts. If we've tapped many of these other supplies and we still find ourselves short, Bayside is a local project that we could also bring online. All right, next slide.
Mike, before we go to the next slide, I want to see if I can get some more information, get some thoughts on purified water. Let's see.
Okay, well, if y'all would take a moment to complete this poll, I've just very briefly touched on purified water and or potable reuse, and would love to hear your thoughts on that as a potential future water supply for East Bay Mud.
Give everybody a chance to decide. All right, looks like everybody has decided, and poll, and here are the results. So, wow, it's 69% say it's a viable choice. So, and only 6% say no. That is great. Believe me, for those of you who need to know more, you will be learning more. So, thank you, and we will now go on to the next slide.
All right, thank you, Mona.
Mhm.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about what we mean when we talk about potable reuse or purified water. It's actually a technology that's been used for decades, really, in Southern California. It's something that was pioneered in California by the Orange County Water District, and they produce a very substantial amount of recycled water that's then reused for drinking water. In their case, what they use is something called groundwater augmentation. And that in that situation, you have a treatment plant. This says AWTF, and that stands for Advanced Water Treatment Facility. So this is above and beyond just what you might expect from a wastewater treatment plant that's discharging to the ocean or the bay or something like that. This is a much higher level of treatment with kind of belt and suspenders protections in making sure that the water is safe for drinking. In the case of Orange County, what they do is they have a natural buffer, a groundwater basin. So this top figure is supposed to represent after the water's been purified and treated, it's put into a groundwater basin. There's a residence time in that groundwater basin before it's then pumped out and delivered to customers. The next level of potable reuse is called reservoir augmentation, and it's similar in that it uses an environmental buffer, in this case, a lake or a reservoir. A purified water is delivered to the reservoir, and then from that reservoir, the water is drafted out and then cycled through a second water treatment plant, our standard drinking water treatment facility, before it's delivered to customers. And then more recently, the permitting is now in place, and there are some entities that are moving ahead with what's called direct potable reuse. That's raw water augmentation or treated water augmentation. And in these cases, that after it goes through wastewater treatment, it then goes through the advanced water treatment facility, and it's then either delivered to a drinking water treatment facility directly, or it's delivered directly into the distribution system. And the difference depends on the level of permitting and protections and safety nets that you have in place between your AWTF and your drinking water treat and your customers. And no one is doing treated water augmentation yet in California, but there are several entities that are in the process of developing programs. So I think that our expectation for East Bay Mud is we have a lot of other potential sources of supplemental water supply, including, as I mentioned, groundwater storage, water transfers, etc. So I don't anticipate that East Bay Mud will be the first to complete a raw water or treated water augmentation program. That our purified water program is, as I said, a decade or 2 decades out, and that we're going to use that time to help educate the public more on the reasons why it would be important to use this technology and on its level of safety. So a lot more to come on this topic, but wanted to be sure we introduced it to this in this forum and make sure people are kind of thinking that down the road eventually we may need to go to a purified water system, which of course is expensive because there's a lot of power and other needs in doing that advanced water treatment. I think, Mona, I think you can move on to the next slide.
Yes, we're switching topics, Dave, Mike, sorry.
Yep, switching topics. So East Bay Mud has about 57,000 acres of watershed land. About half of that is in the East Bay, and half of that is up in the foothills around our reservoirs. And when we think about that land, we think about it performing an active function. It's not just vacant land. It's land that's performing the important function of protecting water quality. And so as runoff runs across this open space and this natural land, it's in effect being treated. The way that we might think of it is almost as if it was like a filter at a water treatment plant itself. So that land provides an important service to all of us by improving water quality. So it's really important that we maintain it and protect it. And you see the sign there, protected watershed, no trespassing. We do have some recreational opportunities on our watershed land, but always as a water district, as someone whose main purpose is to protect your water supply, our focus is on protecting water quality, protecting public safety, and protecting habitat on our watershed land. So next slide. So we get a lot of questions because we are, our land interfaces with the urban areas, and we get a lot of questions about what is East Bay Mud doing to protect against large wildfires, especially when it comes to our own watershed land. And there are many things that we're doing, and I'm going to talk about a few of them. First of all, we have an active grazing program. So we do have both cattle and goats that are used on our land to graze down the grasses to reduce the threat of wildfire. And then this is just one example of a project here in this photo. These are Monterey pine logs. We had a significant die-off of Monterey pines around San Pablo Reservoir during the last drought, 2022. And so even before that had happened, we had been every year removing Monterey pines because we knew they were near the end of their life, they were stressed, and they were dying already. So we haven't had for, over 10 years an active program of removing trees at San Pablo Reservoir. And we use mechanical fuel reduction. And then what this photo is pile burning. So there is not a good market for this lumber, this dead wood. And the most economical and environmentally safe way to dispose of this material is actually to burn it. And these are, in this photo here, we're burning these log piles. And one thing that is a goal of this program is that every year we move a few more pines, which allows the native oak trees to emerge. And so rather than remove all the pines in 1 year and have all the oaks be the same age, a better solution is to remove the pines slowly so you get oaks of different age classes. So we have some oaks now that are 10, 15 years old, and we have some oaks that are 1 year old. And so that gives us a better, more resilient forest. And the oaks as a native species are less likely to be a source of a wildfire. All right, move on to the next slide. This is another example of this is what we call fuel break work. So when we're trying to protect open space against wildfire, the best thing that we want to do is remove the understory, remove what we call ladder fuels, the brush, the low grass that can spark a fire and allow it to push up into the tree canopies. But we want to keep the canopies in place. And the reason for that is it provides shade, which reduces future fuel growth. So on the left, you can see the before photo. This isn't exactly the same location, but it gives you an idea of what an untreated area looks like on the left in terms of brush and growth in the understory. And then on the right, this is Fish Ranch Road near Grizzly Peak, between the Caldecott Tunnel and Grizzly Peak. And what we're looking at here is an area that's been treated. It's treated about, 50 to 75 feet on either side of the road. And we've removed all of the brush and anything that's likely to trigger a wildfire that could move up into the tree canopies. But we left the trees in place to provide that shading so that we don't get as much growth underneath in the future. All right, next slide. And of course, we partner with other agencies, and we've been able to bring in grant funding to support vegetation management in the East Bay. East Bay MUD itself contributes money toward vegetation management. Our budget in the East Bay watershed is about 1.9, almost $2 million per year on vegetation management. But we also participate in grant-funded programs in collaboration. The Tunnel East Bay Hills Fuel Break is a collaboration with Moraga Orinda Fire District. The Grizzly Peak Fuel Break is a collaboration with East Bay Regional Parks, UC Berkeley, and the City of Berkeley. We also participate in forums and coordinate with our sister agencies on wildfire management and fire response. And that includes a group called the Hills Emergency Forum that was created after the 1991 Oakland Hills fire. And we're also on the advisory committee of the East Bay Wildfire Coalition of Governments. So we're working closely with our fellow agencies that manage land and have responsibilities for fire protection. All right, and then key takeaways, and this is kind of summary of Dave's as well. Dave's point that we will escape drought conditions this year. We will have enough water for 2025. East Bay MUD is always planning for future droughts, and protecting water quality and managing watersheds are part of our East Bay MUD stewardship mission and a way that we protect public health by providing high quality water to our customers.
And I'll stop sharing and we'll move on to questions. All right. And Rolando, do we have some questions?
Yes, we have some questions. Some of them Dave answered, but I'd like to, for the whole audience to hear. So one of them is from Susan. She asked, please discuss golden mussels, RE supplies and effects on recreation.
Mike, you want to?
Yeah, I guess I'll take that one. Mm-hmm. So the golden mussel is an emerging threat for water agencies, for anyone with facilities in water, as well as for the habitat of the state of California with respect to water. Golden mussels are an invasive species. They originated in Asia, and about 30 years ago, they were detected. Sorry, is there a question? About 30 years ago, they were detected in South America, in Brazil. And so now, as in October of 2024, they were detected for the first time in North America, and they happen to be detected in Northern California, near the city of Stockton in the Delta. So they're very close to East Bay MUD's water infrastructure. Golden mussels are a threat for a couple of reasons. The main thing is that they attach themselves and they grow in huge colonies that can plug up water infrastructure, power plants, water intakes, bridges, boats. They're a major nuisance and can cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to scrape off and try to remove on an annual basis. So we want to do everything possible to avoid that. They also are a threat to our habitat because they outcompete native species in the water, so they do damage that way. And then because they're new and their populations might cycle up and down during a die-off period, they could create low oxygen conditions that could kill lots of different species in rivers and lakes. So again, we want to do everything we can to avoid golden mussels getting into our system, and we're still learning about them. Honestly, the first time they've been in North America, we're still learning whether or not they could survive. What we know is that they are more of a threat than previous mussel species because they can survive at low calcium levels in waters with low calcium levels like Pardee and Comanche reservoirs. So what we've done in order to be protective until we learn more, until we can be assured that our water system and our habitat is safe, we're prohibiting boating, private boating on all of EBMUD reservoirs through 2025.
Which is not very popular, but absolutely necessary.
Right. And we're anticipating that given another 6 to 9 months of knowledge, we'll have a better plan in place for the coming years that will protect our infrastructure and still provide those recreational opportunities. And I should mention that we do have boat rentals available also at nearly all of our reservoirs. So that is still an option available.
Okay, Rolando, are you still there or did I lose you? Okay, we will go on with, we have a question on why not chip the pines?
Good question. So we actually do chip the pines. You'll notice in the photo that I presented, those are really big logs. So the kind of chipper that you would need to chip whole logs that are, up to several feet in diameter is very expensive, very difficult to manage, and it's more economical for us. We chip all the branches, we chip all the smaller logs, but that big stuff is really just too large for the type of chippers that are available to us.
Okay. All right, Rolando, you want to take the next question?
I got kicked out, so all my Q&A has
Just
been
kidding.
wiped out.
That's okay.
So I
So-
apologize.
All right, so can the pine piles be turned into pellets and exported to Europe?
Yeah, I would just say that we did one pilot with a company that took some pine logs from us a few years ago, shredded them for animal bedding for pets. They found it wasn't economical, and that was a facility located in the foothills. The idea of long distance transport for this kind of material just does not pencil out, has not penciled out yet for anyone that we've seen.
Okay, and this one, can central sand effluent be pumped into East Bay reservoirs? What would be required to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, that is one of the concepts that we've studied when we determined that maybe potable reuse or purified water is something we could do, years down the road here. Central Sand has a significant amount of wastewater. They're located in Martinez. Our McKelmy aqueducts go pretty close to their facility. What would be required is an advanced water treatment facility that would purify the water to a high enough level that it could then be put into our system and delivered to our reservoirs, either one of our existing reservoirs. So it is possible. It will not be cheap, and it will require significant treatment and permitting.
Okay, and this one is back to the mussels question. To be cautious, the boat rental companies ensure that their boats are dedicated to a single reservoir, correct?
Correct. We have rentals our rental boats are dedicated specifically to those reservoirs.
Okay, and then can residential water wells be used to supplement municipal water supplies within East Bay Mud District?
Dave, I'm going to give you that one.
So in general, if you have a well on your residential property, if it is properly isolated from, so we do not want you to supplement our water, but we want you isolated from our domestic water system, from the municipal water system. So if it is properly isolated from the municipal water system, you can use a well on your property to irrigate or for anything you want. But no, we don't want to use private residential wells for a variety of reasons to supplement the water supply in general, if that answers your question.
Okay. And going back over to some of the questions that were answered, why is 2005 through 2007 used? Does it represent a normal rain year?
I think, yeah, so I answered that one in the chat, and just to summarize what I wrote there, or in the Q&A box there. Yeah, so 2005, 2006, 2007, that line that I was showing is an average of those 3 years. Those 3 years were generally unaffected by drought, so they were normal years, and they were a long enough time ago to give us a baseline to measure our present water demand against. But those years were unaffected by drought.
Okay. And our water is fluoridated. As far as I know, there is, and this is from Bev Rubik, as far as I know, there are now recognized health issues from fluoridation, making communities abandon fluoridation. Is EBMUD considering this? Will they stop fluoridation anytime soon?
So yeah, we get this question a lot. We do not have a plan to suspend or stop fluoridating water. We are required to do that with our state permit. Yes, elevated levels of fluoride. There are a handful of studies that show the detrimental health effects to elevated levels of fluoride. The levels of fluoride in our water are much lower than those studies. And the benefits of fluoridating water continue to be far greater than the detrimental effects. And keep in mind, those detrimental effects have been measured only when the levels are much higher than what is in our water. But no, there's no plan to stop fluoridating right now. If regulations change, that could change. But right now, the regulations have not changed.
Okay. And what is the source of the water for Bayside? Desalination?
The Bayside well source would be water, the same water that we all drink. So the idea behind Bayside is to take the water from our system in wet years, put it into the ground, and save it there for a dry period, and then pump it back out and reuse it during that drought. And when we do put it in the ground, it will mix with the native groundwater. So we put in drinking water from our system, and what comes out and is retreated is a combination of our drinking water that's mixed with groundwater that is also safe to drink.
And what impact would firefighting chemicals have on watershed land in the event of a wildfire?
So this is retardant that is going to be deployed by CAL FIRE typically to try to combat a wildfire. They do use it judiciously, and I've never seen CAL FIRE spray it on top of one of our reservoirs. Obviously, they would be applying it surgically to areas that are burning. But yeah, it does contain metals in it. I think it would probably be a bigger impact for wildlife that are immediately near where that retardant is deployed. We do not detect it in our water. We can remove a lot of these metals with our treatment anyway. I would be far more concerned if there was a wildfire in our watershed. I would be far more concerned with the loss of vegetation and the potential impacts of having high turbidity runoff and other water quality problems that we would get if we had a fire in the watershed. But it is an issue. But I think it would be a relatively minor impact, probably a bigger impact on the environment than on drinking water quality.
Okay. And our last question is groundwater depletion from commercial well use a potential problem as it is for some California communities?
In the East Bay, we have a groundwater basin called the East Bay Plain. It runs from roughly Richmond to Hayward, and from the bay, edge of the bay, up to the Hayward Falls, so the base of the foothills. It's a small groundwater basin. It's not nearly as productive as groundwater basins in the Central Valley. It is not used significantly for irrigation or other commercial uses. There are some private well owners that use it for backyard wells. There are a few parks that use it for irrigation and a golf course that I'm aware of. But overall, the East Bay Plain groundwater basin is in a sustainable state. It's not being overpumped at the moment.
All right, that ends all of our questions, and thank you all for joining us. First of all, I want to say happy trails to Mike as
Thank you.
as he rides off into his very exciting retirement and refuses to take us with him. But and we want hope you will join us next month on May 21st for our Water Wednesday. It will be budget and rates, and you probably want to tune in to find out, are your rates going up? And I'm just going to say some of you are going to be happy, some of you probably not. So please join us, and thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.